As we continue our look through the book of James, today we're going to be talking about waiting well. You know, we live in a society where it's instant everything. We have to have our fast food, our fast internet, quick fixes on everything. But we have to understand that God doesn't work on our schedule. He uses his own schedule. And so James in chapter 5, what we're looking at today, he writes to Christians who are hurting and tired of waiting for God to help them, to answer their requests. They wanted their problems solved today. And in James chapter 5, verses 7 and 12, we read how waiting on God isn't just about sitting around and doing nothing. It's about trusting him while we keep living for him. And verses 7 to 12, be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. So again, here James is writing to Christian Jews who were scattered around the region, and they were suffering. They were being pushed down. They were being oppressed. And the rich, the wealthy in that time, they were treating them badly, and they wondered if God had even cared about them anymore. And this passage, and you think about this passage comes right after James warns those rich oppressors about God's coming judgment. Well, in these few verses, I want to pull out 3 spiritual truths that we can learn. Number 1, God's timing is perfect. And this is verses 7 to 9. And I'll read them again. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. And so he pulls out this, patience. God's patience, God's timing is perfect, and we need to be patient when it comes to his timing. And he talks about a farmer. A farmer plants seeds, and once he plants the seeds, he has to patiently wait. He doesn't go out every morning, dig up the seed to see if it's growing. He knows that good things take time. He knows that he just needs to tend the crops for months and months until the harvest time comes. And because that's simply how farming works. You plant the seed, you tend it, you wait for water from God, and you fertilize, and you put down the weed killer and all those things. But you have to wait. That's just how farming works. The farmer doesn't get angry because it's taking so long for the seeds to grow. He knows that that's just how growth works. And so he patiently waits for that to happen. And you think about God's timing being perfect. God's work is in our lives follows that same pattern. His timing, sometimes it feels really slow to us. But his timing is always perfect. It is just right. He sees what we can't see, and he knows what we don't know. And so we are to just trust in him as we go through life. If we are facing oppression, if we're facing suffering, if we're facing the struggles of life and we're calling out to God, he knows what's going on and he will help us at the perfect time. And you think about other passages. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is a great example. Is that Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes, and everything is, it's just a chasing after the wind. I couldn't think of the term. Everything, you work so hard, but it just comes to nothing. But he talks about God's timing. He says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And most of us probably know this passage. And he talks about just the different things. God's timing. There's a time to be born, but also a time to die. A time to plant or to uproot. To kill or to heal. To tear down or to build. To weep or to laugh. To mourn or to dance. To scatter stones or to gather them, to embrace or to refrain from embracing, to search and to give up, to keep or to throw away, to tear or to mend, to be silent or to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. And so he's saying, what Solomon's just reiterating here, God's timing is perfect. There is going to be a time when we love, but there's also going to be times where we hate. There's going to be times when there's war, but there's also going to be times when there's peace. But his timing is perfect, and we have to remember that. It may not make sense to us, but God's timing is perfect. Another passage is from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29 to 31. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But then he says, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength at the right time. We may be beaten down, oppressed, struggling, weakened, but those who hope in the Lord, he will renew their strength at the right time. They will soar on wings like eagles, and they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And so he's talking about just trusting in God's timing, trusting in that he's going to help us at the perfect time when we need it most. When we're frustrated with God's timing, we have to remember this. When we're frustrated with God's timing, what we're basically doing is telling God we know better than he does. I need this now. This is when this needs to happen. And God says, that's when you think it needs to happen. But here's when it needs to happen. I know what is best for you. And so faith means trusting that God's schedule is perfect, even when it doesn't feel like it. So if you're going through a time where you're just waiting, take comfort in knowing that in his perfect time and in his perfect way, he is going to work in us what needs to be worked out in us. So God's timing is perfect. Number 2, hard times build strong faith. And this is verses 10 and 11. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. And so James, he reminds us of people who went through tough, terrible times, but never gave up on God. He speaks of the prophets and how many, if not most of the prophets, they were rejected. They were beaten. Many were killed for speaking God's truth. And then we talk about the story of Job. We've talked about that before, how Job lost everything. His family, his wealth, his health, and yet he kept trusting God. and God restored him in the end. These people, they didn't have easy lives, but their hard times made them stronger and not weaker. And that's the truth that we need to remember. When we go through hard times, it makes us tougher if we will just simply trust in God, trust in his timing, and trust that he is helping us to grow through whatever it is that we are facing. Passage to look at in regards to this, Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. Says, we also glory, Paul writes, we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. So Paul, he has that realization that as he's going through these difficult times, what God is doing, he is strengthening us. Suffering leads to perseverance, and that perseverance leads to character, and that character leads to hope. Another passage, Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Again, that same principle. You've had to go through many things, many sufferings, but what it does, it proves our faith. It proves the genuineness of our faith. Because as we go through those tough times, those hard times, our faith is made stronger if we allow it to be used in that way. One other passage, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. God doesn't send us hard times to hurt us. He uses them to help us grow. And so, we even look at our own children. We punish them when there's wrongdoing, but why do we punish them? To show them their wrongdoing, but then also to give them, strengthen them in their faith, or strengthen them in the way they are supposed to live. And that's exactly what God does with us. He allows those hard times to come to build our faith, to strengthen our faith. He doesn't send the hard times to hurt us. He uses them to help us grow. And so every struggle we face is a chance to become more like Jesus, or to allow Jesus to live in us and through us. That as we live our lives, we are that expression of who Jesus is. We are the example of Christ on this earth. Number 3, we need to say what we mean. Say what you mean. And this is verse 12. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. And so, talking about say what you mean. Don't make promises that you can't keep. I know Michelle and I, when we watch TV shows or movies, and the parents or the people in those situations say, I promise I'm going to do this. And we think, don't promise that, because you don't know if you'll be able to accomplish what you're promising. We need to say what we mean. Don't make promises that we're not sure we can keep. Or don't try to give out big promises just to convince people that you're telling the truth. I promise you, this is the truth. We shouldn't have to do that. As followers of Christ, we shouldn't have to make promises to say, hey, what I'm saying is the truth. Our character should be solid in that what we say is what we mean. That people should believe us without extra promises. They should just believe us because of what they have seen in us, that consistency. to be able to say what we mean. Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. And this is a passage that, James was just saying this about, just let your yes be yes, no be no. Otherwise you're missing the mark. Well, he was just repeating what Jesus told his followers. Matthew chapter 5 would be the Sermon on the Mount, verse 37. Jesus says, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And so just speak truth. Say what you mean. Speak the truth when given the opportunity. Don't try to mince words. Just speak the truth. Say what you mean. Another passage is Proverbs chapter 10, verse 9. It says, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. In other words, just do the right thing. Always do the right thing. Don't lie. Don't fudge figures. Don't tell little lies. Just speak truth and live the way that God intends us to live. Another passage, Psalm 15, and I'm going to read this whole psalm because this is such a powerful words from David. He writes out, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live in your holy mountain? So who are those that can be close to you? Who are those that can be in your presence? Who are those that are going to be able to stay with you forever and ever? And he gives this list, and it all points to say what you mean, or be that honest person that he wants us to be. He says, the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks truth from the heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor and casts no slurs on others, who despises a vile person but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps an oath even when it hurts. I make a promise, but I keep it even though it hurts, and does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken. That is a powerful psalm of how should we live. And it comes back to say what you mean, be consistent, and trust in the Lord. So when we follow Jesus, our words should be so trustworthy that we don't need to make a big promises to prove we mean it. Be consistent with how we live. Be consistent with how we talk, so that when people see us, hear us, they can trust what it is we do and what we say. And from these three spiritual truths come three practical actions. Number one, we need to practice patience every day. Don't get upset when things don't go our way. Instead, take those things to grow in patience. Maybe we're stuck in traffic, or traffic is just driving us nuts. Instead of getting angry, why don't we pray? Learn to pray about what's going on around us. When annoyed by somebody, instead of being annoyed, how should we truly respond? What would be the Christ-like way to respond to this person? Or when we pray and our prayers aren't answered as quickly as we had hoped they would be answered, take time to remember how God has been faithful in our own lives. What has he done? How has he been consistent with us? And so practice patience every day. Number two, we need to learn from those who have waited well. Look to those who have trusted God through hard times in their lives. Talk to those Christians, those older Christians, those who have gone through a lot, and talk to them about how God helped them. Let them share their stories with us, and learn how they waited well for God's timing and his answers and the blessing that came from that. Write down ways that maybe God has helped us in the past. What are some answers that he has given to us over the years? What are some ways that he has shown himself? Maybe we go through life and we think, man, God's hardly ever around, or he's never around. But if we would take the time to write down, oh yeah, I remember when God did this, or how this happened. God's hand had to be in that. Or learn Bible verses about endurance or perseverance. Know what the scripture says when it comes to enduring hardships and persevering through those things. And then number 3, make your words count. May our daily conversations that we have with others show that we are followers of Jesus Christ. By the way we talk, by the way we interact with others, may they see Jesus in those conversations. If we're going to make a promise, make promises that we know we can keep. Don't exaggerate about your abilities. Don't exaggerate about things that maybe you cannot accomplish. If you make a mistake, admit that you've made the mistake. Don't make excuses. And if people are seeking counsel or direction and you don't know the answer, simply say, I don't know. But help those individuals seek out the answer they're looking for. And as we make our words count, as we say what we're supposed to, or what we should say, or as we say, keep our words pure, we begin building a reputation of being honest. And people will see that, and they will come and seek us out for direction when they need it. So we talk about waiting well in this passage, and patience, endurance, that waiting well, it's about trusting God to take care of the thing, the big picture of life. It's about us continuing to serve him even during those unknown times. And that patient endurance, it comes from knowing that God truly loves us. And that our suffering that we face, the hard times that we face, it has a purpose. It's helping us to grow in our faith and our understanding of who God is. And that endurance comes when we trust in and know that Jesus is coming again, and he's going to make everything right in the end. So when we face trials, unfairness, and long waits, as we go into this new week, remember, God's timing is always better than our own timing. He's going to do things in his time frame, not ours. Trust in that. Our hard times are making us stronger every day. Know that. We all face struggles throughout every day of our lives. Well, let's turn that struggle, let's turn that hardship around and realize it's making us stronger. And our honesty today, when we are honest today, our words count, making our words count. Our honesty today is building our reputation for tomorrow. As we are consistently honest, straightforward with our words, our reputation will grow with those around us. So as you go into this new week, I pray that we all will have those times of waiting well, having the patience to trust in God's timing, knowing that he's going to fulfill whatever it is he wants to fulfill in us and through us as we wait for him. The Lord bless you all. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I hope to see you next time. God bless.